what makes me special to cyber criminals? You know, we sit there and say, you know, there's so many people out there. Why would they sit there and attack southern Minnesota businesses, people? But according to Verizon's 2018 data breach report, small businesses actually make up 58% of cyber attacks. In that year alone, over 14 million SMBs experienced a cyber breach. So when you start thinking about those numbers, they just really seem astronomical. Now you sit there and say, once again, why would somebody go out and want to do something like this? You know, you hate to say it, but it's as basic as money. It's financial gain. What kind of information can they scam or fish away from you to either utilize for themselves real quickly, or in some cases of real intelligent and people that are making a living off of this, they take that information and sell it to different people. You wouldn't think of that, but it's true. You know, and then you ask yourself also, why would a hacker choose my small business? I'm just in Hutch, Minnesota, New Ulm, Minnesota, Sleepy Eye, Springfield, small areas. You know, I'm just small potatoes. No one should really target me, right? I'm safe. But what makes small businesses so susceptible is the belief that they are too little for hackers to care about. Since many don't have proper infrastructure to fight the attack, it actually allows malicious hackers to walk right in the front door. And I mean, sit outside your building, you know, or if you're on a public street, they just park outside and, you know, basically see how many different systems they can get into. Even with a few layers of security, a hacker can still manage to crash a network or transfer funds or gain away private data. How do they go about doing this? You know, what is the key to getting in the building here? And that process is called spoofing. By definition, spoofing is to deceive or to, you know, create a hoax. In the business world, it's a fraudulent or malicious practice in which communication is sent from an unknown source disguised as a source known to the receiver. So basically what you're looking at there is you think you're getting an email from the CEO or CFO of your company, but in reality, you're probably getting an email from this guy looking to get your data, your private information, and utilize it for his self-gain. This is actually a more recent photo of Rob, so sorry, Rob, I had to share this one. Now, you sit there and say, well, if that's really the case, then how come manufacturers don't put anti-spoofing software directly into their measures, right into their software right from the get-go? But the reality is not all spoofing is bad. Many companies will hire third-party vendors who will send bulk or lead-generating emails on their behalf, or in some cases, bigger companies are going to have an assistant who needs to send out emails from that other person in the organization. So if you've got like an executive assistant that handles certain, well, I'll call them bulk emails, but in many cases it doesn't even have to be bulk. It could just be communications that is considered non-confidential stuff. So for this reason, it is important not to block all spoofed emails. So how does it work? Basically, what we're looking at is it's called phishing. And what they do is they're using an email software. Spoofers change the sender's display name or email address to make it appear as if the email is coming from a trusted source. Hackers hope to trick recipients for funds or sensitive information. Here would be an example from like Wells Fargo. You know, everything on it kind of looks real, but they're asking you to verify your account, right? Why would your bank be sending you an email to ask you to verify your account? But in today's day and age, where so much more communication is coming out that way, sometimes we use poor judgment and we click and we give them information. Typically, you're going to see these emails, especially when they come from a CEO or a CFO, have alluring and generic headers, you know, request or instructions or acquisition or invoice or swift response needed are some of the top words and phrases that are associated with phishing. You know, hackers, like I said, hope to trick recipients for funds or sensitive information. An average employee receives 121 emails a day. So spoof emails can accidentally go unnoticed. You're sitting there kind of clearing up your email at the end of the day, and next thing you know, you've clicked on something that you shouldn't have. And one mistake, just one, can cause damage or loss of company funds, property, or reputation. all which, many times, especially in today's day and age, you can't recover from. So how can Microsoft 365 ATP help? And this is where Tanner will come in and tell you about the product.
Thank you. Yeah, there's three major components to ATP1 at least. It's kind of the anti-phishing / anti-spoofing methodology of protection, the safe attachments, and then the safe links. I'll start off with anti-phishing / spoofing. The first methodology is what I like to call anti-impersonation. This is geared towards keeping your high-level officials' emails and identity safe, basically. The way this method works is email addresses have a display name that when you send an email, it says, it's from Tanner Peterson or whoever, but the email address doesn't necessarily have to be associated with that person. So when you set up anti-impersonation, basically what it does is it says any email that comes from John Doe, who is your CEO, it has to come from his email address. If any other email address has a display name of John Doe, it is going to block it. And this is a good way to make sure like I said, your important officials, your HR, your CEO, anyone who is dealing with financials, isn't being impersonated through a very, very minimum spoofing attempt, but a spoofing attempt nonetheless. Another method is kind of the anti-domain, and this is just a very broad brush that's painted over your organization. So like, for instance, if anybody were to take on their domain, for instance, like @nuvera.net, and they are not a part of the organization, it will immediately block that email address, essentially, because it is trying to spoof someone who is not in their organization. And like I said, this paints a broad brush over your users and really protects them quite nicely. The third part of this is called mailbox intelligence. And this is completely optional. I understand some people may not want to work with AI or don't feel comfortable with it. And if you don't, that's completely fine. But basically what mailbox intelligence does is it analyzes your individual mailboxes and who you communicate with often. And it can basically associate common people you associate with. And it can further those relationships and allow communication between the two. Or if it sees unusual associations, it will basically send a red flag to us and that user, letting them know that this is not a person you normally associate with, and it will quarantine the message. The next step would be safe attachments, like I mentioned earlier. Basically what safe attachments does is when your email is received into your mailbox, Office 365 will take that attachment that is in your email, and it will open it up in a sandbox environment. And what this does is, in some virtual computer in the cloud, it opens up the attachment and it sees if that attachment contains any malicious content that could potentially harm you or your business. And with that in mind, there are 4 different methods we can use to attachments that are in that sandbox environment and determined to be malicious. The first one is monitor. Now, this is one I do not recommend setting, but it's certainly an option if somebody just wants to try it out and don't actually want the security in front of them. All monitor really does is it continues to deliver the message after malware is detected, but it just tracks and scans the results. The next method would be block. This is probably the most strict method. What it does is before the email can even be delivered to your mailbox, it will scan the content, obviously, and then it'll just completely block the email and its contents. This is, like I said, the most secure method. It doesn't allow any type of communication with that content or user if it is determined to be malicious. The next one is simply replace. This basically sends the text message of the email to you, but it will replace the attachment with a file just stating, hey, we determined this was not safe. That's why we did not deliver it. Please work with your IT if you'd like to, get that information or get that content. And the one I'm currently using the most, and the one I recommend would be the dynamic delivery. And this one's really nice because it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You do still receive the message in text form. So if the user is writing to you, a message pertaining to the information or the attachment at hand, you still can see it. And this is nice for making sure you don't block people you want to be corresponding with. But then what it does is it delays the attachment. So you will see an attachment, icon in the email, but then you'll also see a little scanning bar next to it stating, stating how long it's going to take for that attachment to arrive. And this is just really, really nice for the user because, like I said, you can see the content, you can see the user trying to communicate with you, and then after the scan, you will see if the actual content is malicious or not. And if you believe it is, and you've worked with the person numerous times, you can work with your IT for us to unblock it. Scanning does take anywhere from about 30 seconds to 2 minutes. So it's nice to receive the message, have confirmation you received it if you're working with someone over the phone on receiving that email. But also you will have to have a small delay there for the scanning period. It also, as a kind of a side note, it is recommended to have a designated mailbox to have messages forwarded to in case there's any scan errors or timeouts. These are pretty rare, and I haven't really even encountered one yet. But just for a safety purpose, if a scan were to get cut off midway in the cloud environment for whatever reason, it would then automatically forward to a mailbox that an admin can check and then forward to that user or release. And also safe attachments can also apply to other Microsoft products such as Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. I'm not sure if your organization is using those tools or not, but they are quite handy, and I would advise turning that feature on as well. The next product of ATP1 is Safe Links. And what this basically does is it will scan the link that is associated on your email address or on your email, and then it will track the IP and cross-reference it with other malicious databases to make sure that destination is safe. ATP can either block or keep the email forwarded to you and have the user decide if they'd like to view the other contents of the email, similar to safe attachments. That way we can see if the user is receiving malicious content or receiving someone from a trusted source. The link I discussed earlier will actually redirect the user to a warning page that just that says, hey, we've deemed this unsafe. If you'd like to get to this web page, please contact your administrator, and it will not allow them past it. And then ATP we can also customize the links. So if you have any known URLs you'd like for sure blocked and not in your email, we can do that. And any link that is not designated in those lists will automatically be scanned, and we'll go through the ATP database basically and make sure that you do not receive a link that is malicious. ATP2, this is basically the second level of, or the second license that ATP can provide to you. It comes with all features of ATP1, which are the meat and potatoes, those three features I just described, the anti-spoofing, the safe attachments, and the safe links. It will give, the big thing of ATP2 is it gives Nuvera more reporting tools to track trends and hunt down past issues so we can further have more foresight into what we can protect you for in the future, basically. It does come with automated incident responses, which basically makes the job of investigating a situation easier for us. It does offer Explorer instead of real-time tracking. And this is basically just an upgrade of what we can all track with your email and what we cannot, basically. And it also extends the period for how long we can track. ATP2 does come with simulated email attacks. And this is very good for educating your users or potentially seeing users that may be high risk or more apt to click on potentially malicious emails. We can send out directed attacks at individual users, do a blanket attack over the whole organization, and then record data basically to show you who is at risk, who needs maybe a little more training on potential email risks. And it will ultimately lead us to help those users out and become more knowledgeable with the situations they could encounter. And this is just a basic graphic of what you'd see from a standpoint of what your email security would look like. And some of these features are already involved with the basic email security, such as the email is routed to EOPDC. That's not a part of ATP. The big one is seeing the virus scanning and the policy enforcement, the extra spam protection, and then the overall advanced threat protection at the very end. And it just shows you a basic analysis of how that information actually travels to you safely and how you can report it to us. And we can gather more information and block more content for the users. One thing I will say, and this kind of circles back to the initial thought I just had, and that is, this really is a great protection tool. It's definitely with the organization I've used it pretty extensively with, filtered a lot of nonsense out of their mailboxes for sure. But one thing I like to tell the users is pretend it's not there and always be on guard regardless, because at the end of the day, it's going to require a user interacting with that email to have any type of issue with you or your business. So it's great to arm yourself with as many tools as possible, but also try and stay knowledgeable. And that kind of leads back into the ATP2 attack simulation. That's basically a rough summary of what this tool can do. We can certainly go into more detail if you'd like and give you very exact information. But that's basically my spiel.
Well, we certainly thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with those that we'll reach out to with the license. Thank you.